You think Apple is the king of modern design? Even as a designer with 20 years under my belt, teaching design at a college and running my own agency, I was honestly floored when I found what I'm about to share with you. Despite all that experience, it took me an embarrassingly long time to realize just how big of a role IBM plays in the design world. That's the plot twist most people miss. IBM isn't just tech behemoth, it's also a major player in the design scene. And today, we're going to shine a light on why IBM is actually one of the unsung heroes of modern design. Take IBM Plex, for instance. The first time I used it, I was blown away by the fonts, clean, functional, elegant. But it didn't even register with me that the IBM in Plex actually stood for IBM. I just thought, wow, these fonts are awesome. I'm sure I'm not the only one who didn't make that connection. IBM was just the company behind ugly gaming computers from my childhood, the ones with the big outdated logo. And let's be honest, that logo is kind of ugly, but I guess that's what happens when you're over 100 years old. So of course, it never occurred to me that IBM had anything to do with good design. Then when I started preparing to teach a course on AI and design, I stumbled across something surprising. IBM wasn't just dabbling in AI. They were a major player in the AI design space, and that's when things clicked. I connected the dots. IBM had the Carbon design system, which I'd heard of, IBM Plex fonts, which were some of my favorites. And now IBM was also influencing AI in design. That's when I began to dig deeper. And what I found? Well, it totally changed how I see IBM. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how IBM, this century-old tech giant, has quietly become one of the most influential forces in modern design. IBM has quietly shaped the modern design landscape. You'll discover some of its most iconic contributions that you probably use every day without realizing. You'll understand why their design influence remains under the radar compared to flashier tech giants. Let's start with something many of you probably use every day. Especially if you're a designer, I'm sure you face a constant challenge. How do we balance design empathy, making human-centered, design-driven decisions with the power of data-driven choices? This tension has given rise to what we now call dark patterns, manipulative design techniques used to trick users into making decisions they wouldn't otherwise choose. Take companies like Booking.com, Facebook, and especially Amazon. These dark patterns are used to drive engagement, boost conversions, or lock you into their ecosystems. In many cases, data-driven decisions overpower design-driven empathy, creating a user experience that prioritizes profits over people. Now imagine if design thinking, the process of putting the user at the center of design, didn't exist in corporate culture. We could have been living in a much darker world dominated by these manipulative practices where only data mattered and user empathy was just an afterthought. But that's where IBM comes in. They helped popularize design thinking and made it a standard part of how large corporations work, balancing empathy with data. This methodology didn't just change how products were designed, it changed how companies solve problems. IBM didn't invent design thinking, but they were the ones who scaled it and made it a core part of corporate culture. Without their influence, corporations might still be solely focused on what the data tells them, rather than considering the needs and experiences of their users. Design thinking is all about putting the user first. It's a process that starts with understanding the user's needs, defining the right problems to solve, brainstorming solutions, and iterating on those ideas through prototyping and testing. But here's the catch. Most corporations are data-driven, where decisions are made based on numbers, analytics, and conversion rates. IBM understood this and found a way to scale design thinking so it could work alongside that data-first mentality, creating a balance between what the data says and what the user needs. For instance, General Electric used IBM's design thinking framework to redesign healthcare products that actually respond to the needs of doctors and patients. SAP, one of the largest enterprise software companies in the world, applied design thinking to make their notoriously complex software more intuitive and user-friendly. By embedding design thinking into their cultures, these companies were able to strike that crucial balance, solving business problems with data, but through the lens of human empathy. Without IBM's influence, we could have ended up in a world where dark patterns and manipulative designs dominate, where businesses focus only on the numbers and not on the people using their products. But by bringing design thinking into the corporate world, IBM helped ensure that user empathy would be as important as data in the decision-making process. IBM helped ensure that user empathy would be just as important as data in the design process. And that's a pretty big deal, right? It changed how corporations think about design, making it more human-centered and ethical. But after talking about such a huge, game-changing concept like design thinking, let's zoom in for a second. Let's talk about something small but close to every designer's heart: Fonts. As designers, we're all a bit obsessed with typography. Every great designer I know is in love with fonts, and honestly, I'm no different. And that brings us to IBM Plex. It's not as monumental as design thinking, but for me, it's something warmer and just as valuable. IBM Plex isn't just another font, it's a favorite among designers. Sure, it's simple and easy to use, but the quality is undeniable. The balance, the readability. It's got this modern functional elegance that makes it feel right at home on any platform. Now, I get it, it's not as iconic as some of the classics like Helvetica or Futura, and it's not as widely associated with platforms like San Francisco or Roboto. But for me, IBM Plex stands right up there with Helvetica and Futura. The thing about system fonts like San Francisco and Roboto is that they feel almost tied down to their respective platforms, Apple and Android. IBM Plex, though, is different. It's versatile. It feels modern, yet it's neutral enough to be used anywhere, on any project. That's why I personally place it in the same category as Helvetica and Futura, timeless, flexible fonts that can fit into any designer's toolkit. It's simple, but it's beautifully crafted. And every time I use it, I'm reminded of how IBM's attention to design, even in something as small as a font, makes such a huge impact. So, while IBM's Design Thinking transformed corporate culture, their work on IBM Plex shows their commitment to even the smallest details in design, details that designers like me truly appreciate. Now, let's talk about something I have very mixed feelings about: design systems. Consistency is key in digital design, especially for big corporations, and IBM was one of the first to introduce a fully scalable open source design system. Their Carbon design system is designed to help teams create consistent, user-friendly interfaces across all their digital products. But here's the thing, I'm not a big fan of design systems. In fact, I think they can sometimes hold designers back. They're trendy right now, and I get why big companies need them for consistency. But when you're not working for a massive corporation, a design system might just limit your creativity. In my experience, focusing too much on building a design system can cause designers to shift their attention away from actual design and towards structure and rules. For smaller teams or independent designers, this can eat up a ton of time that could be spent actually creating. Before you jump into creating a design system for your work, you really have to ask yourself, will this improve my speed or consistency? Or will it just be a massive time drain to build and maintain? If you're a small team, you might not even need a design system at all. Focus on your design first. Then maybe once things get complex enough, you can think about systems. But while I don't think design systems are essential for most of us, I can't deny that they've been an absolute game changer for large corporations. And IBM's Carbon design system, it was pioneering in this space. It really set the standard for how big companies should structure their design workflows. So yeah, I may not love design systems, and I think 99% of designers don't need to dive too deep into them. But for the 1% working in giant companies, Carbon has been a massive influence, and it's definitely helped them get design right. And you know what else designers hate? When we're building an interface for a small, specific audience, and the client says something like, they'll learn how to use it. There are only 10 users, so why make it comfortable? I mean, seriously? I get this all the time. Clients saying, we only have a few users. Why bother making it intuitive? They don't have a choice but to use it, at least until some competitor comes along. It's the most frustrating thing because this mindset leads to terrible user experiences. I always ask them, so why did you hire our agency to do interface design in the first place? Why are you spending such big money if you don't actually want us to make it comfortable for users? It's like, if you're investing in a good UI to show off your brand's identity, why wouldn't you make it comfortable to use? It's mind-blowing to me. Sorry, that's just one of my personal pains as a designer. Now imagine this mindset applied to big, complex systems, like the software that runs entire businesses. That's the risk so many B2B systems face. Without the right mindset, they end up looking like a total mess. But here's the thing, IBM was the biggest player pushing back against this mentality. They understood early on that design isn't just about looking pretty or slapping a logo on something. Design, especially in enterprise systems, needs to be functional and accessible for users. It needs to solve problems and make people's lives easier, not harder. IBM's approach was about more than just UI. It was about user experience, UX, and they transformed how big corporations thought about this. They made sure that UX design became a core part of every company's strategy, especially in industries where complex software is the backbone of day-to-day operations. And this was especially in B2B industries like finance, healthcare, and technology, where complex systems are the norm. IBM's focus on data-driven design and user research set the standard for making these incredibly complicated platforms not just functional but easy to use. From financial platforms to healthcare systems, IBM was instrumental in making sure that user comfort wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity. They set the standard for designing software that's intuitive even when it's built to handle incredibly complex tasks. So yeah, every time I hear clients say they'll just figure it out, I remind myself of how IBM fought back against that kind of thinking. They showed the world that whether you have 10 users or 10,000, user experience matters. And if we've learned anything, it's that comfortable, intuitive design isn't just nice to have. It's the difference between success and failure in any industry. Now, as designers, there's one thing we always talk about, human-centric design. But here's the real challenge, bringing that concept to something as complex as AI. AI is fascinating, right? It's one of the biggest innovations of our time, and I use AI tools a lot in my own work. In fact, I've been thinking about rebranding my agency as an AI design agency. I mean, I'll even admit, sometimes I feel like I am AI myself. You've probably noticed. But here's the thing, without careful design, AI could easily become cold, overly technical, and disconnected from the very humans it's supposed to serve. IBM recognized this early on. Their Design for AI initiative is all about making sure AI systems aren't just powerful, but also ethical, understandable, and human-centered. They created 5 key ethical principles for developers and designers like us to make sure we're building trustworthy AI. And let's not forget conversational AI, those chatbots and virtual assistants that seem to pop up everywhere. IBM's approach to conversation design goes way beyond just understanding what we say. They're focusing on creating AI that understands what we mean. They're teaching bots to get context, emotions, even show empathy or humor. And the goal? To make sure these systems connect with users emotionally while still being clear that, hey, this is a machine, no pretending here. Now, the reason I've been diving so deep into AI, especially from IBM, is because I've been working on something really exciting. My new course on AI tools for designers. I've worked with thousands of designers and I've noticed something. When designers start using tools like Midjourney or other generative AI tools, the quality of design often drops. Why? Because it's so easy to fall into the traps these tools set. I mean, you just type in what you want and boom, it appears. But that's exactly where the mistakes begin. Our course isn't just about using Midjourney, it's about avoiding those mistakes. It's about mastering the tool so that you maintain your design quality and don't fall into the traps that so many designers are caught in. We're going to release this new course soon and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be premium, deep, and pretty expensive, starting from $3,000. Once we launch it, we'll be closing our Midjourney for Designers course that's currently on Gumroad. And before we take it down, you can grab it for 50% off. It's a shorter text course, but if you buy it now, you'll still have access even after we close it. It won't be around forever, maybe a week, maybe a month. I'm not sure yet, but this is your chance to get it at a huge discount before our big course launches. So if you want to level up your design skills with AI and make sure you're using tools like Midjourney the right way, head over and grab that course while it's still available. IBM, a company most of us think of as a tech giant, has actually been one of the most influential forces in shaping modern design. From design thinking to corporate fonts, from AI-driven creativity to user experience. Their contributions have transformed the way we interact with the world. IBM didn't invent a lot of these things. They didn't create AI or human-centered design or even UX. What they did do was adopt these concepts way before they became buzzwords, and they played a huge role in pushing them into the mainstream. They used their power and influence to make these ideas widely known and more accessible. Unlike companies like Apple, which keep their design innovations locked in their ecosystem, and that's fine, they make money. IBM's focus has been on using their resources to make the world better for everyone. They didn't just keep their innovations to themselves, they worked to make them available to businesses and people everywhere. And honestly, that makes IBM the good guy corporation in my book. It's really insightful to see a company that isn't just focused on their own profits, but on making impactful changes for the broader design and technology community. That's not something you see every day, and it's pretty empowering to witness. And speaking of empowerment, I've actually been thinking about making my Gumroad Midjourney course for designers free. But then I remembered something. I need money. And to be honest, this course is already super cheap, especially with the 50% discount I'm offering right now. So if you grab a copy for yourself, I'm sure you'll find it helpful and interesting, especially if you've been trying to figure out how to avoid the common traps that AI tools like Midjourney present for designers. Of course, by buying the course, you'll be helping me continue to create more great content for this channel. So it's a win-win. Once again, it's really cheap and full of value. So go ahead and check it out. And if you've got any thoughts about how IBM's influence has shaped your work, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going.